Hi guys, welcome to the channel of love. This is our study time with our study group, and we are studying, a lot of studying, How to Raise Your Own Salary by Napoleon Hill. I cannot remember. We're on a new chapter, I know that. Okay, we're on chapter 9. I was going to say I cannot remember what chapter we're on. But chapter 9, Organise Your Thinking. Okay, we can do with some of that. I just feel it's a perfect time to read this chapter. Okay, time is a relentless master. It forces everything and everyone to gravitate to where it belongs by its nature. That's where we ended up. Okay, organise your thinking. Hill, you have explained that the ninth principle of individual achievement is organised thought. You have stated also that no one may be sure of success without the ability to organise his thinking habits. Therefore, will you go ahead, Mr. Carnegie, and explain the meaning of the term organised thought? I have a general idea what it means, but I would like to have a detailed statement of its meaning, also a clear understanding of how this principle is applied in the practical affairs of life. Carnegie, before discussing the organisation of thought, let us examine thought itself. What is thought? With what do we think? Is thought subject to individual control? Thought is a form of energy that is distributed through the brain, and it has one particular quality unknown in connection with all other forms of energy. It has intelligence. Thought can be controlled and directed towards the attainment of anything man may desire. In fact, thought is the only thing over which any person has complete, unchallenged control. The system of control is so complete that no one may penetrate the mind of another without his consent, although this system of protection often is so loosely guarded that one's mind may be entered at will by any person skilled in the art of thought interpretation. Many people not only leave their minds wide open for others to enter and interpret their thoughts, but they voluntarily disclose the nature of their thoughts by unguarded expressions of speech and their personal conduct, their facial expression and the like. Hill, is it safe for one to leave his mind open to free entry by others? Carnegie, just about as safe as leaving the door to one's home unlocked, with all of one's valuables left inside the house, except that the loss of purely material things is a nothing compared with the loss one may suffer by leaving his mind open to entry by any stray tramp who may wish to go in and take possession. You see, the habit of leaving one's mind open and unguarded not only permits other people to enter and become familiar with one's most private thoughts, but this habit permits all sorts of tramp thoughts released from the minds of others to enter one's mind. Hill, you believe then the thoughts do pass from one mind to another through the principle of telepathy? Carnegie, that fact has apparently been established by men of science, but I have evidence of its existence from my own personal experience. Yes, one's mind is being constantly bombarded with the impulses of thought released from the minds of others, especially those with whom we come into close contact daily. As I have stated before, one negative-minded workman, if left to associate with other workmen, will pass on his negative thoughts to every person within the range of his influence, although he never speaks a word or makes a single move indicating his state of mind. I have seen this very thing happen so often that I could not be mistaken about it. Hill, and that is why you emphasise so strongly the necessity of harmony between men associated in a Mastermind Alliance. Carnegie, that is one of the major reasons why I have emphasised the importance of harmony. The chemistry of the brain is such that the mind power of a group of men can be organised so it functions as one unit of power only when there is perfect rapport between the minds of individuals. Hill. One of the important steps in organised thought seems to be that of the Mastermind Alliance, through which men pool their mind power, their experience, education and knowledge, and move in response to a common motive. Is this the right idea, Mr. Carnegie? Carnegie. You have stated the matter perfectly. You might have said that the Mastermind Alliance is the most important step one may take in connection with organised thought, for that is true. But organised thought begins with the organisation of the individual's thinking habits. To become an effective member of a Mastermind Alliance, an individual must first form definite, controlled habits of thought. A group of men working together under the Mastermind principle, each of whom has so disciplined himself that he controls his thought habits, represents organised thought of the highest order. As a matter of fact, there never can be full assurance of harmony in a mastermind group unless each member of the group is so self-disciplined that he can control his own thoughts. Hill. Do I understand you to say that an individual may actually discipline himself so that he controls the nature of his thoughts? Carnegie. That is true, but remember that one gains control over his thoughts by forming definite thought habits. You know, of course, that when habits are once formed, they function automatically, without any voluntary effort on the individual's part. Hill. But isn't it very difficult for one to force his mind to function through definite habits? How may one go about this sort of self-discipline? Carnegie. No, there is nothing difficult about the formation of habits. As a matter of fact, the mind is constantly forming thought habits without the conscious knowledge of the individual responding, as the mind does, to every influence that reaches it from one's daily environment. Through self-discipline, one may switch the action of his mind from the response to the casual influences around him to subjects of his own choice. This is accomplished by setting up in the mind a definite motive based on a definite purpose and intensifying that purpose until it becomes an obsession. Stating the matter differently, one may fill his mind with a definite purpose that is so interesting it leaves him no time or opportunity to dwell upon other subjects. In this manner, he forms definite thought habits. The mind responds to whatever stimuli one feeds it. When a man is driven by a strong desire to achieve success in any given direction, his mind responds to that desire and forms definite thought habits connected with the attainment of that desire. Hill. Then organised thought begins with definiteness of purpose. Carnegie. Everything man achieves begins with definiteness of purpose. Name a single instance, if you can, where a man has achieved any form of success without a definite motive, based on a definite purpose, carried out through a definite plan. But you must remember that there is one more factor that must be considered in connection with definiteness of purpose. The purpose must be expressed in terms of intense action. Here is where the power of the emotions gives an account of itself. The emotional feeling of desire for the attainment of a definite purpose is the power that gives life and action to that purpose and influences one to move on his own initiative. To ensure satisfactory results, one's definite purpose should be given obsessional proportions. It should be backed by a burning desire for its attainment. Desires of this sort take full possession of one's mind and keep it so fully occupied that it has no inclination or opportunity to entertain stray thoughts released by the minds of others. Hill. I believe I see what you mean. For example, a young man who is in love has no difficulty in keeping his mind on the object of his love, and not infrequently his mind works out ways and means of inducing a response to his affection from the woman of his choice. In this sort of circumstance, one has no difficulty in forming controlled thought habits. Carnegie, a good illustration. Now switch it over to some sort of purpose, such, for example, as the development of a business or a profession, or the attainment of a definite position, or the accumulation of money, and you will have an idea of how these ends are attained through obsessional desire for their attainment. Hill. But, Mr. Carnegie, one usually cannot put the same sort of emotional desire into the attainment of material things that he experiences in his love for the woman of his choice. Carnegie. Of course not. But there are other emotions with which he can stimulate his desire for material things. Study the 9 basic motives, and you will observe that any sort of a desire is emotional in its nature. There is the desire for material riches, and it is a rather universal and well-developed desire with most people. The desire for personal expression, leading to recognition and fame, the desire for self-preservation, and the desire for freedom of body and mind. All of one's emotions, including, of course, the emotion of love, can be converted to the attainment of any desired end. The desire for the accumulation of material riches may, for example, be combined with one's love for the woman of his choice, where the desire for money is associated with one's desire to provide the woman of his choice with the comforts that money will buy. In such a circumstance, one would have a double motive for the accumulation of money. Hill. I see what you mean. As a matter of fact, one might be influenced by all of the 7 positive motives as a driving force behind one's major purpose in life, could he not? Carnegie. Yes, by the 7 positive motives and through transmutation of emotion, by the 2 negative motives as well. You know, of course, that any emotion, whether positive or negative, may become an inspiration to act that can be directed to the attainment of a desired end. The motive of fear, for example, often serves as a powerful inspiration to action. To benefit by it, one has only to control action habits until those habits become automatic. Hill. Do you mean that habits function voluntary without any effort on the part of the individual? Carnegie. Yes, that is exactly what any habit does when it becomes fixed. Hill. You say when it becomes fixed. What fixes a habit? Must an individual do that? And if so, how does he proceed to make a habit permanent? Carnegie. Habits become fixed by unknown law of nature, which causes the impulses of thought to be taken over by the subconscious mind and voluntarily carried out. This law does not make habits. It only fixes them so they can operate automatically. The individual begins a habit by repeating a thought or a physical act. After a time, depending upon the emotional feeling that goes into the thought, one's thought habits are taken over and followed voluntarily. Hill. Then the formation of habits is something that an individual may control? Carnegie. Oh yes, and may I remind you that the control of habit forming is an important part of organised thinking. If you overlook this fact, you will have missed the most important thing in this interview. You see, an individual may set up any sort of habit he chooses, go through them for a while, very much in the same manner that one would go through a physical culture setting up exercise, after which the habits will become automatically perpetuated without his conscious attention to them. Hill, and you say that some unknown law of nature fixes one habit so they perpetuate themselves? Carnegie, that is an established fact. It is one of the most important facts in the entire field of mental phenomena, for it is literally the medium by which an individual may take possession of his own mind. Think that over before you pass on, and remember that the man who uncovers the secret by which nature fixes man's habits will have made a stupendous contribution to science, a greater contribution perhaps than that made by Newton, who discovered the law of gravitation. Perhaps when the discovery is made, if it is ever made, it will be revealed that the law which fixes men's habits and the law of gravitation are closely related, if not actually one and the same. This remark by Carnegie planted in his protege's mind the seed which developed 30 years later into the revelation of the law of cosmic habit force, described in a later chapter. That was in brackets. Let me have a drink. Okay. Hill, your hypothesis intrigues me, Mr. Carnegie. Could you elaborate upon it? Carnegie, not very much. Your question reminds me of a story I heard. After he had preached a 2-hour sermon on the sins, a coloured preacher was requested by a member of his flock to elaborate on the subject. Well, said the Reverend, sin am the thing we have the most of and knows the least about. I'll repeat that. Well, said the Reverend, sin am the thing we have the most of and knows the least about. All we know definitely about habit is the fact that any thought or physical act that is repeated tends to become perpetuated through some force which carries on the habit automatically. We know that habits can be changed, modified, or eliminated altogether by the simple process of voluntarily adopting opposing habits of a stronger nature. For example, the habit of procrastination, a habit with which everyone is more or less afflicted, can be mastered by setting up definite habits of prompt intuitive, based on a sufficiently strong motive to ensure the new habits a dominating influence in the mind until they become automatic in their operation. Thus you see that motive and habit are twin brothers. Almost every habit one adopts voluntarily is the result of a definite motive or purpose. You see, therefore, that one may establish any habit he desires or eliminate any undesirable habit by applying enough self-discipline to fix his habits until they become automatic. If habits are not fixed voluntarily, they develop without one's conscious help. It is in this manner that most undesirable habits are formed. Hill, is it obvious then that the principle of self-discipline is a necessary tool in the formation of habits one deliberately forms? Carnegie, self-discipline and organised thinking are almost synonymous terms, if that's how you say that. Okay, so self-discipline and organised thinking are almost synonymous terms. There can be no organised thinking without strict self-discipline, for after all, organised thought is nothing but carefully chosen thought. Thought habits can be established only through strict self-discipline. Motive or obsessional desires make self-discipline very easy. It is no trouble at all to form thought habits if one has a definite motive backed by a strong emotional desire for the attainment of the object of the motive. Hill, do you mean that it is easy for one to form thought habits in connection with subjects in which one has a keen personal interest? Carnegie, that's the idea. The procrastinator drifts through life, a failure, because he has no obsessional motive for doing anything in particular. His thinking is not organised because he has chosen no specific calling for organised planning. Hill, will you briefly describe the major benefits of organised thinking from the viewpoint of the man who wishes to make the best use of his time and ability? Carnegie, the benefits are so numerous that it is difficult to decide where to begin or where to stop, but these are some of the more obvious advantages of this habit. A. Organised thinking enables one to become the master of his own mind. This he accomplishes by training his faculty of will to control his emotions, turning them on and off as occasion may require. B. Organised thinking forces one to work with definiteness of purpose, thereby enabling him to set up a habit that prohibits procrastination. C. It develops the habit of working with definite plans instead of blundering ahead by the hit or miss method. D. It enables one to stimulate the subconscious mind to greater action and more ready response in the attainment of desired ends, instead of allowing the subconscious mind to respond to the tramp thoughts and destructive influences of one's environment. E. It develops self-reliance. F. It gives one the benefit of the knowledge, experience and education of others through the medium of the Mastermind Alliance, which is an important medium used by all able thinkers. G. It enables one to convert his efforts into greater material resources and larger income, since an organised mind can produce more than one that is not organised. H. It develops the habit of accurate analysis through which one may find the solution to his problems instead of worrying over them. I. It aids in maintaining sound health because mind power that is organised and directed towards the attainment of desirable ends has no time to be wasted in connection with self-pity or imaginary ailments. Idle minds tend to develop ailing bodies. J. Last but by no means least, organised thinking leads to peace of mind, and that form of permanent happiness which is known only to the man who keeps his mind fully occupied. No one can be either happy or successful without a planned programme for the use of his time. Planned programmes are based on organised thinking. As I have stated before, the brain is something like a rich garden spot, in that it will voluntarily grow a fine crop of weeds if it is not organised and kept busy growing a more desirable crop. The weeds are represented by the stray thoughts that take possession of the unorganised, idle mind as the result of one's daily environment. Study this list of benefits carefully, and you will reach the conclusion that any one of them offers sufficient reward to justify all the effort one puts into organising his thought habits. The sum total of all these benefits represent the difference between success and failure. Success is always the result of an ordered life. An ordered life comes through organised thinking and carefully controlled habits. I feel like I'm going to stop now, okay? Let's see, make sure I just don't have... Okay, this can take us into another session, which might be today, but I'm just going to take a break. Okay, how awesome was that? Was that part of that chapter? It come in really well with our current readings. Anyway, guys, I will catch up with you soon, so take care. Much love. Bye for now.